K24 TV, you can tweet us right there. Talking about what's happening as far as Nairobi County is concerned and how it moves forward. Before we took the break, there was something Honorable Kioni brought up, and the issue that it almost became a point where, regardless of what substance you have to offer, as long as you have the numbers, as long as you can mobilize a group of people to do a certain thing, that's what got you a seat at the table, and that's what you could use as negotiating leverage wherever you went. Sonko was a case in point. But we're looking at a scenario of how do you move forward from that? Because at the end of the day, politics really is a game of numbers. And that's what we're looking at right now. How do you make it devoid of that, even as we move forward and try and have a different type of politics that rules?
No, Jeff,
even as he takes it, let me say one thing I'm unable to reconcile my mind with, that you escaped from prison and you are a governor. I am unable.
And the thing is, it wasn't exactly, even as he tries to reconcile, it wasn't exactly a secret. He didn't hide that fact. He had said it in different fora.
Yes.
So it was out in the public domain.
In fact, that should be tragic. Because what I was telling you earlier on before he comes in, there's something that I've always repeated. See, the tranquility of a nation is based upon the premise of a very simple truth. Nothing is important in a democracy like an informed electorate. Informed electorate. That tells you, if the electorate is not informed, the results are going to be tragic. We are living, like I said the last time I was here, we are living in complex times. You're talking about the sophisticates of the 21st century. You're talking about people who are thinking. You're talking about intergalactic missions. You're talking about people, countries that are now seriously able to feed themselves, countries that are talking about almost a near medical, countries that are really revolutionizing. And here, we are electing leaders based on the fact that they can marshal support, not people who have content of character and people who can assist our country moving forward, not people who can help our country engage with other nations to bring about results that the country can be grateful for. We are still in the ages where we look at a leader of how, based on how he is dressed, not what he can deliver. Jeff, we still want to be part of the great organization of the 21st century, yet we cannot do the minimum of them all, which is electing a good leader. Then we have a problem.
Those are the questions we need to ask
ourselves.
We
have a problem. I mean, we are coming from a state where a governor cannot even trust the people who are working around him. The positions, when you look at the CECs, the amount of people he's supposed to have, he has not filled those positions. All right? When you look at the CEOs, the county CEOs, out of 20-something, only 10 are available. And you're told some of the CECs are given monthly contracts. All right? They cannot even bring ideas that can be well received. Half of them are afraid to even engage because they do not know whether they are being recorded or not. And then you are running the most sophisticated city in the country. We are the center of a joke.
There's a tweet that has come in at Muthari1 saying, show us any candidate who was barred from running. Even those without degree certificates were allowed and the Supreme Court ruled in their favor. We are talking about Sonko here, but it's all across the board. What is the same, Millie?
It is true.
It is true.
And I think the problem is, as Mheshimiwa said, although he doesn't want to be called Mheshimiwa, but he is a Mheshimiwa, that you must look at our electoral system and ensure that it works. You know, the minute the electoral system does not allow people to be able to even vote, let me explain myself. For a long time, people said, women have the numbers. Why can't you vote women in? Now, research done showed that women don't vote. And the reason why women don't vote, when you come to interrogate it, is because I'll be standing at the queue, it's getting to 5 o'clock, I can see the young goons coming to protect the boxes, I will go home. I will not vote. And I'm standing there at 5 because I went at 8 and IEBC had not started. You know, there are so many reasons that many people who would even go and vote and perhaps have an impact on the kind of electorate that we have are not standing up to vote. So if we look at all these things, all these circumstances, and ensure that the voting is, people are able to vote and they're able to vote peacefully, that will be a plus. Now, secondly, is if the systems work. I see in one of the papers today someone saying that the vetting should be a multi-agency approach. It is still a multi-agency approach even right now, but it's not working. It's not working. So what we need to do is to ensure that those systems work. I know now, as a police officer, you'd sit there and say, really, if someone brings me the name Mike Gideon, I will say there's nothing about this Mike Gideon, but he has 17 other names. Remember the time we had discussions about Waititu? How many names does he have? There's even no record that he left the country. Yet, we know he left the country at some point, but there's no record that he left to go and study. So if our systems also don't work, and we don't ensure that they work properly so that you're able to vet, in some countries, the minute you move, your mail follows you to that house. Even before you report that you have moved. Because the systems work, there's record, if you can be tracked. But here, even with the ID, we keep taking IDs of people saying that now I have your ID, I'll disappear. Right. Where will you trace me?
Ken, let me come to you, because as you talk about the systems and institutions that actually should do the vetting and be the sieve between who makes the cut and who doesn't, there's also the question of, is there a hidden hand that forces these particular institutions to let some people vie in that particular instance, where we have people with questionable past and clear issues that should be flagged and shouldn't have them get to the ballot? Do we have that problem?
The problem is it all goes back to our politics. Everything that is wrong in this country is the architecture of our politics. The parties are very personalized, and a party comes into power, the same characters will influence who gets what position, not on merit. And this is seen, look at the vetting that happens in Parliament. Parliamentarians sometimes, I sympathize with them a few weeks ago when they said, we clearly reject these candidates that have been put before us. But because of the mobilization skills and, of course, the numbers, the two candidates went through, notwithstanding that there are questions on their KRA certificates and who gave and what. And those institutions just looked at us and said, this is it. But having said that, there's something that happens. I don't think we ever hold an election in this country. Maybe close to it was 2002. Most of them are just farcical acts where we do this, patch this, and go them. It's a whole systemic failure. But there is something also that history teaches us, that a society that has lived a lie, has put false structures to support its weak legs and everything that it stands on. There comes a time when it has to crumble and begin to regrow. People believe in extreme things, the philosophy like nihilism. There is, maybe BBI will bring us that point where we'll shake everything down to the ground. Right. And the next person.
And build it afresh.
And start afresh. Because as it is, we can, no amount of pillars we put to support ourselves. Because right from the voting system itself, why do people vote? Why do I wake up in the morning? Because I was up country the other day and people are saying, what have you got to give? When they see you putting up something small, they say, this man is ripe for a Mheshimiwa. Why? Because they think they can extract something out of his pocket. Do we stand for anything? If somebody asks you, what makes you a Kenyan today? Right. Is it because you live within the geographical confines? Or do you stand for something that anybody else that can pick from us? Right. So our fundamentals are wrong. And unless we get those fundamentals, sometimes you have to clear that bush so that maybe like Mheshimiwa Kihoni says, President Kenyatta needs to accept and sit back and say, BBI is going to be my panga to clear this bush that is Kenya. So that I will go down in history, and popular as it may be, but I will have to do it. But that will take greater courage for him to step to the stage, besides mere rhetoric, and say that it has happened, it will come down. Somebody raised something else the other day. Even as we do these things, do we still put tribe? Truly, we are. Do we talk about region? We do. Those are the things that really blur our own greater vision. And riding a captive thing, it's not that we do not know what to do, but we are blackmailed because of poverty. Right. Because imagine what happened in Nairobi last time during the election. It was the people, the critical people, majority, 60% of the people in Nairobi live in the slums. And that's Sonko's vote bank. We watched it happen, and they said, this man gives us handouts, and they turned Those are our brothers and sisters. But what is it that we can fix so that they don't get 10 shillings to elect somebody here and then spit in our faces?
It's a key question you need to ask there. And let's deal also with the here and now. And, as the PD is talking about some of the choices that we have as a county. Gabriel, where do we move from here in terms of the leadership of Nairobi County? Looking at a scenario where if it was business as usual, we would have a deputy governor who would be holding fort until this mess is cleared out. We do not have that. We have a speaker whose tenure has been quite dramatic, to say the least. And CECs that, like you said, working on monthly contracts.
Exactly.
Where does the county go from here? Can it operate, or does it remain on autopilot until?
More than anything, even though that may appear a legal question, I've had several people talk about the scenarios that may play out. So first one, I told you, Sonko will remain governor until, something radical happens, something like an impeachment or what have you. But following what Justice, was it Njoki, who Mombi, Justice Mombi, what she said was somebody, when a governor is actually taken to court, they cannot come back to the office. From the office. They're barred from the office, even though they still remain the governor. So I don't know whether that's a lacuna or not, but who takes over now? And I think the best probably person suited may be the speaker, but for how long? I think for 60 days. Then thereafter, something else has to happen. So we are looking at a possible scenario of either a by-election if Sonko is found guilty, or if the MCAs can marshal support to do an impeachment. We do not know how that will go. Or getting some sort of committee to run the county affairs. As is. Nairobi is a very delicate place right now to just be left without any form of leadership. Not what was there before was, was able to perform, but still, that question notwithstanding, you need an element of direction in Nairobi, so for the county. So there are several scenarios that are going to play. We just have to follow and see which one is going to play out better. And finally, just put a spec on what he said. I think he is very right when you talk about a working system. If the systems were set to work for the common mwananchi, that mwananchi will not be struggling to reach Sonko for handouts, to tell him, oh, I need a bill paid in hospital. If our healthcare system was working, that person will not try to reach to Sonko to say, I don't have fare, because our economy in Nairobi is thriving and working. So there are people who in those leadership places will ensure that a system does not work so that they can behold, the masses who are in informal settlements. Imagine if we are able to sort out the mess in our slums. Have structures where you do not need to be calling upon the governor all the time, but the structure that has been set in place is working for you. That, by all means, that is how it should happen. But now, the people above there, have ensured it doesn't work.
Really, there's a school of thought here that what we are seeing right now in terms of the governor going in police custody and the numerous charges against him is a stage being set. And the stage being set for Nairobi County's administration to go back to national government. And that's just a matter of time before, because there's been talk that probably because of how this county has been run, we've tried it several times, it hasn't worked. Let's take it back because it is a seat of power, highest GDP, and let's just take it back to the national government and we can sort it out from there. Are you seeing the makings of that in this?
This BBI moment gives us an opportunity to frankly discuss that. Really, we have run without a government in place in Nairobi for almost 3 years. 2.5 years is almost 3 years. We've managed somehow. Remember, at one point, the governor was living outside. I think even up to when he was arrested, living outside the county. At one point, I had a training with MCAs from Nairobi, and they had to come in at 11. They excused themselves the evening before because they had to go to Machakos County to meet with their governor, an urgent meeting, and then come back by 11 the next day for the session. So they had to go and see their governor outside the county for them to be able to have a discussion with him. I mean, we have been running on autopilot. So let's be real about it. And we know that we had problems with the first governor. Kidero when he was in office, and people had complaints, and perhaps that is the reason why he was voted out. So if then we manage to run without a proper government in place for 5 years, and we have had none in place for 2.5 years, do we really need one? And what has the impact of that been? It is a frank discussion that we must talk about, really. I know that we are saying that services, devolution is about services, and we need to ensure that services reach each people, including Nairobi. And it is unfair to discriminate people, I being one of them, who are born and brought up in Nairobi, and being told that you must assign yourself to another county elsewhere when you feel more inclined to be identified with this county, and you must get the services here. But is there a better way that we can identify to ensure that those services reach us if Nairobi does not have to become a county? And then we go through the fiasco. Those are 10 years down the drain. 10 years. If we're going to get another 10 years down the drain, it will stop being the city in the sun.
Right.
Yes.
Honorable Kioni, you're shaking your head. Do you feel it's time that the national government took over?
Oh, I didn't even know I was shaking my head. I think these things are... no, I was just... when you, as you were exiting from the earlier discussion, just record that you covered Muriuki being battered, I think somewhere.
Just around here.
Just around this, next to your office here. You must have been the first ones on the site to cover him. And what became of it, it was clear that the goons had been hired by Sonko, the governor. He was beaten, and everything that you'd never want done to a person was done to him. And what happened at the end of it all? Charges were withdrawn, and we were told it was settled out of court. But what would you have expected Muriuki to do, other than to settle it out of court? He was going to get another beating in the process of pursuing his justice. Why? Because the system seems to have resigned to a gang kind of management of the city. We are managed by a gang of characters you don't know. So while that, I thought the government would have taken the opportunity to try and sort out some of the difficulties that we are in. But I think we are where we are, and we need to try and get out of it without complaining, because we saw ourselves getting there. And this is the thing. When we were doing the 2010 Constitution, the issue of how to manage our city was heavily discussed. But again, because of the very diverse political positions that we had taken between ODM and PNU, even when we could see that we are almost not coming up with a proper management system for the city, we kind of resigned to that easier option given the time and the pressures that were there. So I am actually owning up to the fact that it was clear to us that Nairobi cannot be managed as a county. Because when people talked about devolving services, they were talking about devolving services from Nairobi to the countryside. So we needed to know how do we then manage Nairobi, which is still near the services, near the national government. But again, there wasn't enough time, one, two, but also there was too much political temperatures, and there was a lot of fighting between the two political divisions to allow us to think hard about Nairobi. And we are there now, and I think one of the things that the committee I chair had already done was to put a constitutional amendment on the table, even before the coming out of the BBI, where we are saying remove Nairobi from the 47. Let's define Kenya as one of 46 counties, and then come up with a management structure for Nairobi as our capital city, being done in other countries. BBI has come up with the same thing, and this whole thing only helps us to perhaps make this happen by 2022. It should happen 2022. We should do everything possible to ensure that we do not vote in a governor for Nairobi 2022. It cannot work for the reasons that have been said around this table, and also for the reason that if we allow Kenyans to vote, it's not the fair thing to say, but the fact that we have denied Kenyan services to the extent that majority of those living in the slum areas are going to vote, they would want to vote one of their own whom they think is going to bring allowed changes. And we can actually see the kind of persons who want to come out from there. We have some very sensible people, but they also don't come. For you to get the vote, you have almost to say the wrong things and be seen to be doing the wrong things. But since we can tell that Nairobi requires a different leadership for these people to benefit from the services, then the government must come and do something. I think it is important that we rally behind the ideas that have been brought around by BBI, that we need to rethink the management structure of Nairobi. Where we are today, I don't see like, I don't think it's a strategy. You can't appoint Sonko to appoint a deputy governor. In any case, if the fake letter that we saw the other day was anything to go by, he was going to appoint Bogwa. And Bogwa is his right-hand man. And when you are right-hand man to Sonko, you must also be able to run as per his script. So I don't think we are going to do any better by forcing him to appoint a deputy. I think the thing is this. If the county government, I doubt it, but if the county assembly is able to do what is expected of them, impeach the governor, then this lady who is acting, or the speaker will come in and hold for 60 days. And then we will have a by-election. That's the only route. But if there is no impeachment of the governor, the Sonko remains the governor for as long as the case is in court.
I want us to talk about that, because we're looking at a scenario where, even as we talk about impeachment or how this plays out, we saw what happened when he went in court. He's back for his bail hearing today. We saw the battery of lawyers that were there. There were members of parliament. There were senators as well who were there representing him. Kipchumba Murkomen said that he was there because he felt that this was an attack on devolution and that there wasn't a conflict of interest. I want us to go into the break, but I want a short comment from you, Honorable Kioni, because you're both in parliament and a lawyer as well. Was there conflict of interest? Because this ends up at the Senate as well.
It is clear. It's yet another issue of mob justice by the senators. I mean, they are just lining up there, not because they want to I can't see the picture, not because they want to represent Sonko, but because they think they can also benefit from the voter bloc of Sonko. They are talking to the bloc that votes for Sonko. It is not anything to do with the legal representation. There is a clear conflict of interest. And people of the caliber of Murkomen, Manzo, Mutula Kilonzo, you would expect them to do better than this. But again, numbers do matter. Sonko has the numbers. And they are addressing the numbers more than what they are pretending to be doing in court.
Ken, Sonko is a sacred cow, it seems. He has the numbers and everybody wants what he has.
Is a layman's view, Sonko has a conviction. The government has the option of making sure that he goes back to jail to finish that sentence, and we will be done.
Yep.
That's it. That is the greatest option the government has. All these are the side scripts, but do they have the courage to take him so that he can come? He has a conviction. Let's not beat around the bush that the man is innocent until proven guilty. He's been found guilty by another court and convicted. Finish his term, leave us our city, and begin to do the right thing.
Okay, and I want to ask, even before to go to the break, very quickly on that particular note, in terms of the conviction, we knew about it, so people will ask, why now?
Why not now?
The systems are coming back.
It could have started from the very beginning. It could have gotten it from the point where...
Allow me to say this.
There's got to be a time. There comes a time.
Is it convenient for somebody, and that's why you need to do it now?
for a moment barred Sonko from running for the governor's position. He went to court and he was given... But an IBC could not be able to even go to court to defend their position. Why? They were overwhelmed. One is that there are two political sides competing and trying to say IBC is not doing the correct thing. You have the Jubilee and you have the NASA. So even IBC was like vulnerable. They didn't know if they side too much with the Jubilee, NASA would then come and say, we have already said these people are unfair. So they didn't have that free hand to manage things. So that is why they were not able to bar members of parliament, members of governor, and all the other positions. But you remember, they actually had a tribunal that put out some issues, and for a moment, we thought we were going to see sanity. But they had to cave in very quickly because of the pressures that were all over. And it's the case even today. If you ask IBC, and we have had interactions with them, the KIMS kit, which was bought way towards the end of the whole process, instead of it being maintained now, it's been left to rot. 2022, we may not be able to use the same KIMS kit, which would have been available for us to use. They will be forced again to go back to the market and buy very late in the day, so that they have so many things they need to deal with at the same time. These kind of characters will then sneak in and become our representatives in all all angles.
We're going to take a short break at this particular point. When we come back, of course, today is when we're going to get that particular hearing as far as its bail is concerned. We'll be giving full coverage of that right here on K24 TV. After the break, let's talk about where the jobs are and where we're standing as far as the economy is concerned. The Standard talking about where you can get the jobs despite the austerity that's going around, but also the Business Daily talking about Kenyans earning more and living longer. This from a UNDP index that was published. We talk about that after the break.